Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to the proper usage, care, and maintenance guide for your Bell & Ross vintage BR-V2-94 black steel. Now, if you're an old hand in the collector game, simply jump forward to the portion of the video that interests you immediately. Otherwise, I'm going to start from the top and take it to the bottom. This is an automatic winding timepiece by virtue of a caseback winding mass, the likes of which you can see underneath the display sapphire. So while the watch can wind itself, nevertheless, you may wish to wind the watch manually should it run down, or if you wish to top off the 42-hour power reserve. In either case, you're going to thread the crown out in a counterclockwise direction until you feel and hear it pop out of the flank of the case. Now it's removed from its stem tube, and 25 to 35 turns in a clockwise direction will be sufficient to start the watch. Should you wish to fully wind the watch up to its maximum rated 42-hour autonomy, simply continue turning. Because of the bridle style mainspring, which is designed to slip and release excess tension, you cannot accidentally overwind this timepiece, so simply turn till you hear the click or the tick from inside the watch that represents the bridle style mainspring slipping. A rule of thumb is that 45 turns will be sufficient to fully energize the watch if you're unable to hear the mainspring slipping. Now, the timepiece can be set by two means. One is a quick set for the date, and one is a full stop session involving what's known as hacking seconds. This session, which involves pulling the crown out 2 detents from flush, will stop the seconds hand, and the best way to use this function is to find a known accurate reference time, such as an online atomic clock, and then stop the seconds hand when it reaches the index at 12. Set your hour hand to the current hour and the minute hand to the next nearest minute. Once the reference time catches up to the time that you've set to the second, you then push the crown back in, at which point the stop seconds will be canceled, the watch will resume beating, and you will have synchronized to your reference time. It's important, whether using the chronograph or the winding and setting crown, to always thread it back in after use to prevent against shearing, impact, and water intrusion. Now, the timepiece has another setting function known as quick set, and you will pull the crown out one position from the winding position to activate the quick set, but you should never activate the quick set between the hours of 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., which is why I always recommend turning the watch through the change of the date at midnight to know precisely where you are in the 24-hour cycle when you're setting a watch that may have run down entirely. Roll through the date change and then advance the watch to 6 a.m. At 6 a.m., now you pull the crown out to its intermediate position and you roll it in a counterclockwise direction to activate the quick set feature for the date. As ever, once you're done, take that crown and screw it down. Now, this watch is a chronograph, meaning it has the ability to measure elapsed seconds down to 1/8 of a second and 30 minutes total elapsed time. The way you actuate the chronograph is to screw the chronograph pushers out from their flush position. Like the crown, they are screw in, screw out, and threaded. You'll note that what appears to be the seconds hand at first glance is actually the chronograph seconds hand, and if you stop it, remember I was talking about synchronizing the watch to a reference time? Well, you have a constant seconds hand right at 3 o'clock that will stop even if the chronograph isn't running, and that is the reference you use, not the hand at center, if you wish to synchronize your watch to a reference time. Now let's talk about the chronograph hand again. Because of the vertical clutch architecture of this movement, you can leave the chronograph running if you wish. There's no additional hazard to the movement for doing so with a vertical clutch. That said, you will run down the power reserve faster while using the chronograph. It's also important to remember that the chronograph must be actuated in sequence. The pusher at 2 o'clock will start and stop the chronograph, and you must always stop the chronograph before using the pusher at 4 o'clock to reset the chronograph. So start, stop, and reset. After 30 minutes, the chronograph will simply roll over and begin timing from 1. It's important to recall that though this is not a rotating bezel sports watch, it is a calibrated sports bezel all the same, what's known as a tachymeter. A tachometer is what you'll find in your car, and it measures distance traveled. A tachymeter is used to gauge the speed of an object over a fixed distance, such as a standing kilometer or a standing mile. So let's pretend we're watching a car that's beginning a time trial across a standing kilometer. When it crosses the threshold of the beginning, you start the chronograph. Now our car, our high-speed record-setting car, is in transit. It's approaching the end of the standing kilometer, and at exactly that moment, it crosses the end of the kilometer. Well, I know I'm dealing with kilometers as my unit, and I can read chronograph seconds against the bezel, 400. 400 kilometers per hour. That's a very fast car. We thread the crown back down, and now we need to talk about handling, and certain restrictions apply. There are three principal areas of hazard when using your watch: water, magnetism, and shock. Before we discuss water resistance, it's important to note that leather, a natural porous material, is never a water-resistant material, and therefore, if it does get wet, dry it immediately. But whenever possible, avoid even splashing droplets or moisture on a leather strap, as it will rapidly degrade in the presence of moisture. Now, that said, the watch is 100 meters water resistant, which is sufficient for aquatic activities such as swimming, but this is not a dive watch. Bell & Ross has those separately in its catalog. It's also important to remember that though this is a swimmable watch, you can help avoid accidental drowning. You see how that crown is threaded out? You want to keep the crown, as well as the chronograph pushers, disused. That is, don't attempt to actuate them or wind, and threaded in completely. Not just while the watch is submerged, but even while there's water on the watch. As attempting to use any functions or withdraw these crowns can introduce water to the interior of the timepiece, and this will have catastrophic consequences, both mechanical and cosmetic. So avoid accidental drowning, keep those crowns screwed down. The timepiece should be inspected with a dry water test at minimum every 24 months per Bell & Ross, because over time, as seals age and lubricants degrade, a watch will be relatively less water resistant than when it left the factory or service. Therefore, roughly every 2 years, at minimum, take your watch to a Bell & Ross authorized service center for a dry water test. This is also a good time to have total condition, water resistance, chronometric performance, as well as cosmetic condition checked. Magnetism, though perhaps not as dangerous as water, is unseen and ubiquitous. You'll find electromagnets such as powerful personal devices or high-powered wiring looms in the home and office. Powerful static magnets also exist, such as, for example, the closures of wallets and purses, speakers and subwoofers, even the pickups of musical instruments. So be careful, and know that a magnetized watch is a timepiece for which the beating hairspring, the heart of the watch, has become magnetized. This may cause fast running or slow running, but if you suspect due to erratic running of any kind that your watch is magnetized, take it to a Bell & Ross authorized service center where specialized equipment is available to quickly and easily demagnetize the watch. Shock and concussion, however, can have more consequential and lasting effects on your watch. Disuse the watch during concussive activities such as mountain biking or ATV riding, firearms, marksmanship, batting, tennis, or golf, as all of these produce sufficient shock and vibration to minimally alter the timing of and maximally stop and damage your timepiece. In terms of service, Bell & Ross advises that every fine mechanical watch should have a complete overhaul every 3 to 5 years. Now, this will include everything from cosmetic restoration of your watch, replacement of a worn strap, restoration of water resistance as rated by the factory, as well as the testing, disassembly, cleaning, oiling, reassembly, and adjustment of the movement itself. Service exclusively with Bell & Ross, the factory, or its authorized service centers abroad, as these agencies solely have the specialized tools, trained personnel, and original Bell & Ross factory replacement parts to protect the value of your watch as both instrument and as investment. Moreover, only these agencies are equipped to back labor and parts invested with a Bell & Ross original factory service warranty. To learn more about the proper usage, care, and maintenance of this or any Bell & Ross fine timepiece, visit our website at govbergwatches.com and call, text, or email our experts who will be happy to walk you through the entire ownership experience.